Hey guys, Jin here, and this is my take on a Crushing Hand build. It slams Torment 4 into oblivion, farms quick, is very satisfying to play, and can do at least tier 120 pits without issue. If you like these videos, please leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment with any suggestions, etc. Thanks a lot everyone, it really helps out a lot. Now let's get to the build. So starting with the skill tree, we're going to take one into Rock Splitter, and one into Enhanced Rock Splitter, not that we're really going to use it anyway. In our core skills, of course, we're going to take all the points into Crushing Hand, so 5 points, and go to Rampant Crushing Hand. Then we're going to take 1 into Vigorous, and 3 into Balanced Exertion. We're also going to take 3 into Follow Through. In our focus skills, we're going to take 1 into Vortex, 1 into Mirage, and 3 into Unrestrained Power. We're also taking 1 into Focal Point, and 3 into Apex. Then we're going to take 1 into Ravager, and go for Measured Ravager. In our defensive skills, we're going to be taking 4 into Armored Hide, and go for the Reinforced Armored Hide. We're going to take 1 into Patient Guard, 1 into Counter Attack, and go for the Reinforced Counter Attack, and 1 into Scourge, and go for the Adaptable Scourge. In our potency skills, we're going to take 3 into Resilient, and 3 into Dominant. We're also going to take 3 into Brilliance, 3 into Potent, and 3 into Furnace. In our ultimate skills, we're going to take 3 into Resolution, Spiritual Attunement, and Supremacy. We're also going to take 3 into the Hunter, with both of the corresponding nodes. And lastly, for our key passive, we're going to be going for Prodigy's Tempo. If you're having troubles defensively, then you could remove the 3 points out of Brilliance, and the point out of Patient Guard, to put 1 into Endurance, and 3 into Perseverance. That will give you a lot of extra damage reduction because of all of your resolve stacks. So as for the skill assignment, we're going to go with Armored Hide, Vortex, Ravager, Scourge, the Hunter, and of course Crushing Hand. We're not using the counter attack here, as we're going to be getting the passive bonus from that from our Ring of the Midnight Sun. So for our Paragon board, for the first board here we're going to go for Outmatch. That gives us bonus to all rare nodes within range, which in this case gives us damage to elites and damage. We're also going to get increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses, and for the legendary bonus we get increased damage while healthy. For our second board, we're going to go for the Sapping board, so when we cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills with the same spirit in a row, we restore 15% of our vigor, and deal 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. As for the Glyph, we're going to be using Menagerous here, so we get a nice bonus to all magic nodes within range, which gives us a lot of maximum resource and some damage. And for the additional bonus, dealing damage with Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills increases all damage we deal by 4% for 10 seconds, stacking once per spirit. So that's a nice 16% damage boost there. And as for the legendary bonus, we get an increase in our Incarnate skill damage. For our third board, we're going to go to the right and take the Revealing board, so on lucky hit, we have up to a 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, and deal 30% increased damage to CC'd enemies. For the Glyph, we're going to be putting in Colossal here, so that's going to give us a lot of Gorilla skill damage, and additionally, we deal 2% increased damage for each stack of Resolve we have. For the legendary bonus, we get a nice increase to damage against close enemies. For our fourth board, we're going up from there and taking Infighter, so when we dodge or block an attack, we gain 2% increased attack speed, that's additive, not multiplicative, and 1% increased damage, that is multiplicative, for 5 seconds, and that will stack up to 9 times. For our Glyph, we're going to be going for Headhunter, so that'll give us a bonus to all normal nodes within range, that's these buddies here, and the additional bonus is we gain an increase to damage against elites. And for the legendary bonus, we just get an increase in damage. For our fifth and final board, we are going up from our second board, the Sapping board, and taking the Vicious Shield board. So this legendary node gives us 1% increased damage for each 3% of our maximum life we have as a barrier. And for the glyph, we're going to be taking Spirit here. So this gives us a lot of critical strike damage, and critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from us by 3% for 20 seconds, up to 15%. And the legendary bonus increases our damage against elites. So that wraps up the Paragon board. All of this will be in the build planner in the description below, along with all of the other things, the Spirit Hall, Mercenary gear, etc. Speaking of, let's get to the Spirit Hall. And we're going to take Jaguar as our primary spirit here, so every 15th time we deal direct damage to an enemy with a Jaguar skill, we unleash an additional strike, dealing 15% of the damage we've dealt to them in the last 0.5 seconds, and also all skills are now Jaguar skills. For our secondary, we're not using Gorilla here, we're going to be using Eagle, and this will synergize with our Helm, as you'll see in a little bit. And as for whatever bonus we get here, it is not really too relevant, as we don't rely on critical strike chance to crit. For the Mercenaries, we're going to be using Rahir as our primary mercenary, and we're going to go for our shield charge, Rahir's guard, provoke, and mocking lore. So basically all the skills on the far left we are taking. And as for our reinforcement, we're using Variana, and we're going to put on Bloodthirst here, and we're going to attach it to our Scourge ability. So whenever we use Scourge, if this is off cooldown, she will use it, and that will allow her to enter a Bloodthirst, gaining 30% attack speed, 200% movement speed and unstoppable, but more importantly, we will get 10% attack speed for that same duration, which is 7 seconds. Lastly, we have the gear. So for the gear on the left, I'll list the affixes we need and that we want to masterwork and temper, etc. So starting with the Helm, we have the Harmony of Ebawaka, that gives us all stats, move speed, damage reduction and velocity ranks. And according to our secondary Spirit Hall, our skills are all additionally Eagle skills, because we have the Eagle as our secondary Spirit Hall. And our skills deal 10 to 30% increased damage per spirit type they have. This is why we don't take Gorilla as our secondary, as we already are using a Gorilla skill, so we'll be missing out on that multiplicative damage. For the masterworking, we're going to try and masterwork the damage reduction. Next up, the chest piece. We're going to be using a normal chest piece here with dexterity and maximum life, as well as resist all. We're going to temper that with barrier generation and maximum resolve stacks, and we're going to try and masterwork those maximum resolve stacks. For the aspect, we're taking apprehension, so once an enemy is slowed by at least 80%, they become feared for 3 seconds. You deal 20 to 40% increased damage to feared enemies. We don't have to rely on the slow, of course, as we fear our enemies with Scourge. Next up, we have the gloves. We're going to be using gloves with dexterity, attack speed, and ranks into crushing hands or core skills, preferably crushing hands, and we're going to temper that with barrier generation and basic damage. For the masterworking, try and masterwork the crushing hands / core skills. For the aspect, we're going to be using Moonrise, so damaging an enemy with a basic skill grants us 4% attack speed for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. At maximum stacks, you gain 40 to 100% basic skill damage and 15% movement for 10 seconds. Next, for the pants, we're going to be using some pants with maximum life, armor, and basic skills. We'll temper that with maximum resolve stacks and barrier generation. I actually ran out of tempering, so I just have vortex size here. As for the masterworking, we're going to try and masterwork the maximum resolve stacks. For the aspect, we're going to be using interdiction, so we gain 1 to 15% block chance per resolve stack. Next, for the boots, we're going to try and look for boots with the implicit of attacks reduce evades cooldown time, or maximum evade, and for the affixes, go for maximum life, armor, and cold resistance or all resistance. Cold resistance is lacking in this build, but if you get it on these boots, it's no problem as it will be capped out. We're going to temper this with barrier generation and movement speed, and try and masterwork the maximum life. As for the aspect, we're going to be going for duelists here, so maximum ferocity is increased by 1 to 5. Next up, the weapon. We're going to be using the Rod of Kepaleke, or however you pronounce this weapon. That's going to give us maximum resource, critical strike damage, chance for core skills to hit twice, and ranks into velocity. Ideally, you want to get some greater affixes on the chance for core skills to hit twice and maximum resource, and you want to try and masterwork the chance for core skills to hit twice. So the aspect for this weapon is very important. So our core skills are now additionally basic skills and free to cast, but deal up to 30% reduced damage based on the vigor cost. When cast at maximum vigor, your core skills consume all vigor to return full damage, cast at their largest size, and become guaranteed critical strikes, and deal 1 to 3% increased critical strike damage for each point of vigor spent this way. So this is why we temper all of the basic skills and get things like the ranks into follow through, as well as not relying on critical strike chance. Next up we have the Amulet. We're going to be going for a Banished Lord's Talisman here. That's going to give us maximum life, attack speed, overpower damage, and ranks into core skills, and we're going to try and masterwork maximum life. For the aspect, after we spend 275 primary resource, our next core skill is guaranteed to overpower, and critical strikes that overpower deal 20 to 60% increased damage. So with the way our Rod of Kepeleke spends our resources, we get a lot of overpower with this build, ideally an overpower every other hit, or even every hit. Next for the rings, we're going to be taking the Ring of the Midnight Sun as our first ring. That gives us dexterity, critical strike damage, cooldown reduction, and ranks into Mirage. And you're going to try and masterwork the cooldown reduction. As for the aspect, when we critically strike, we regain 20 to 50% of the vigor we've spent in the last 2 seconds. This, along with our other vigor generation bonuses, is how we keep our vigor maxed out between every hit. So every hit that we do, a Rod of Kepeleke will drain all of that vigor to give us a critical strike, and that will overpower thanks to the Amulet, and that's how these 3 things work together more or less. We also happen to gain counterattack's passive effect, and that's why we don't need to use it on the skill bar. For our secondary ring, we're just using a normal ring with max life, attack speed, and lucky hit chance to make things vulnerable. I don't have the attack speed, as you can see, I've got the vulnerable damage taking its place. And we're going to temper that with vigorous ranks, or resource generation, as well as basic skill damage. As for the masterworking, masterwork that maximum life. If you can get the implicit for poison resistance, then you would want to use that as well, as that is the lowest resistance with this build, being at almost 60 with the poison resistance on the ring. As for the aspect, we're going to be using redirected force here, so we gain increased critical strike damage equal to 30 to 70% of our block chance, and blocking will double this bonus for 10 seconds. So that's it for the items. Next I'll go over the runes and the gems. We're going to be using Pock and Quay in our chest piece. So when we spend 300% of our maximum resource, we invoke the Druid's Earthen Bulwark for 3 seconds, and that will grant us a barrier. So that doesn't take long at all to get, thanks to the way our rod works with the Ring of the Midnight Sun. And for our other runes, in the Rod of Kepeleke, we're going to be going for Zol and Zal. So when we invoke a skill from another class 2 times, which is the Earthen Bulwark that I just mentioned, we'll gain 20% maximum life for 6 seconds. For the gems, we're going to be using the purple gems, amethyst, in our remaining pieces of armor. That's going to give us barrier generation. And for the jewelry, we're going to be using 2 diamonds for the resistance to all elements, and 1 amethyst for the shadow resistance. We're not going to be completely capped on the resistances with this build, but we are pretty close, as you can see. So that pretty much wraps up this build. Thanks a lot for watching. If you made it this far or learned something, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment if you want to as well. Hope this helps you out. Have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!